You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Now, I want to hear about your death experience, what actually occurred there. But before we do that, you mentioned you were a targeted individual in certain senses. Could you explain that and give some examples of what you were experiencing?
Yes, I can. So I talk about this on my Rumble channel more, but I'll give you the high overview.
Sure.
And that is essentially that I was in Washington, D.C., and I realized that I was hacked. And I was hacked very, very badly. Like, whoa. Spent thousands of dollars trying to understand, like, who was it? I thought it was just some random person in China. So I was like, okay, I changed my passwords. I'm done. No. And then it was like, oh, that's weird. Okay, I changed my laptop. I'm done. No. Okay, that's weird. I changed my home computer. I changed my phone because I found hundreds of photos of me in a secret hidden folder that were taken in compromising positions without my knowledge for years. I found hundreds of these that were my computer was connecting to a remote server somewhere in the world between the hours of 2 and 4 a.m. and then uploading the content of my entire hard drive without my consent, including these photos of me, like sleeping on the couch, in the bathroom. And I mean, it was such a horrific experience. So of course my mind is like, okay, it's gotta be a boyfriend, it's gotta be an ex, it's gotta be, I was going through a divorce. My ex-husband was tech savvy, but I was like, it doesn't make sense. Our divorce is amicable. It didn't make sense. So I was going through all of these different narratives, and this is really important about the TI experience, a targeted individual experience, is that the mind naturally does it. It'll go through these mental gymnastics to try to make it make sense. It's actually a function in our brain to make reality make sense. And this is why a lot of targeted individuals come up with these really grandiose theories, because that's the only way their brain can make it make sense. Anyway, so the hacking was the first step. Then I was gang stalked. Somebody was breaking into my place. I remember walking into my apartment in Washington, D.C., feeling the energy. Like, talk about intuition. Like, I was so closed off to my intuition because it was all in my head. Scientist, I was just so dumb. I really was, because everything was telling me, like, you're in danger. Somebody's coming in. You didn't move this over here. You didn't do that. But I was like gaslighting myself. And this is also what targeted individuals do. They're like, okay, I guess I'm just really absent-minded, got diagnosed ADHD. And so I was like, okay, the ADHD box, that makes sense, right? Well, it turns out that there was that other box that I had to figure out. And when I walked into my apartment and I could feel the energy and somebody was there, I could feel them, I could smell them. They had a very distinct type of deodorant or cologne. And it's just like this, holy, oh my God. And so then I started running, and there's lots of details that I'm skipping over, but I deduced that I was in it deep. And when I was followed, I had—
You deduced that what? I'm sorry, you broke up.
That I was in it very, very deep, and didn't know why. I couldn't figure out why. And so I went on the run, and I started freaking out. I really lost it. And I went to a private investigator. I told them what happened. When I was in high-speed car chases and figured out that I was followed. I didn't know what gang stalking was. He did, and he was like, oh, this is what they do. They try to get you to run your car off the road, is what he said it. And he was like, and you're close. You're going into the ditch, because I was in just such a mess of a situation. Anyway, so I tried to forget about it, and then I moved, and I realized that it follows me. I have a little bit of peace, but then somebody's breaking in again. And I'm having to tell everybody, don't worry, I'm safe. But in the meantime, living in this nightmare situation where somebody can come into my place at any time. And it felt like I was being harassed, but I didn't know who, and I didn't know why. And so then things kept just, oh, wow, it's just so hard. Like, I prepared to die. because I was like, well, I feel like somebody's trying to murder me. So that really propelled my spiritual awakening. And in some ways, I'm really grateful for the targeted individual experience, because that is how I awakened so quickly. And it was such a dominating force in my life. And it took over all of my thought cycles, and it scared me to pieces. Literally, like, I broke down. This construct of me was completely erased. If you saw me 5 years ago, before any of this happened, I would look unrecognizable. My friends and my family had to see my transformation. And I really credit the targeted individual experience for helping that. But then it got worse. So it culminated with having a breakthrough in the psyche and starting to receive telepathy. And I didn't know that that was a real thing. I had no idea that that was a real thing. And then I started receiving instructions. Like, I was told to go back home the night of my death and to trust. And I did. I went back home and I laid in bed and I prepared to die, and I could feel somebody in my place. I could feel them there. I could feel their presence, and I was terrified, and I felt a cold blade on my neck. And from then, everything went mystical and weird. And it's just an amazing story. But what happened is that following that, the telepathy got much worse. And I didn't know that BTK voice control technology was a thing at that time. So I was—
Now, let me stop you for a second. You said you felt like a knife blade on your throat, and then you just lost base reality.
I lost consciousness, and I went to a place where I was sleeping, but I wasn't in this human form. I was in like some other, it's without words, right? But it's kind of like this fairy realm, and I was really small, and I was sleeping on this mound, and it was very peaceful. And then this hand of God is what I conceptualized it. This hand of somebody who was above me was like, you need to go back, and you're not done. And then I came back with this really weird message that I repeat sometimes. I still don't fully understand it, but now, having been introduced to Rumble, I'm starting to get little glimpses of it. And the message is, God is angry about clones. But at this time, I didn't understand.
Angry about clones, you said?
Clones. Angry about the clones. And then I was in my body, but everything was weird. My senses were weird. The person that was there, I could feel them. I connected with their consciousness in a mind meld. And I started trying to talk to them. And I could see that they had a filtering effect over their sensory system, their consciousness. Like, my words were getting twisted in a way that made them hate me, that made them want to hurt me. Even though I was coming from this genuine place, they couldn't actually see it. They couldn't perceive it. And from that point, I tapped into a different version of myself that was like a higher version of the Buddhists call it like the demigod zone. And I started playing out this karmic story where I started acting out this, I knew who it was, and we had created, it was like a secret society. It was related to a secret society where there was this person that was upstairs. I could hear their footsteps, I could feel their presence. They knew what was happening. They were almost like pulling the puppet strings to manipulate this actual person to harm me. Now, I didn't know the person upstairs, even though they had footsteps. I didn't know if they were a cult person or a secret society person, a mafia person. I had no clue, but they were in the know. And I could feel almost this, like, we were doing it for a bigger purpose, because then I went to go and lay down, and I completely separated from my body. And I went to a place of, I call it the void of blackness, where I could see this aggregate of particles and matter. And I started molding them together in this infinity shape. Like, it was like this ocean of particles that I was creating, but I wasn't in my awareness of who I am. I wasn't Dr. C. I wasn't a human. I was just consciousness. And there was no story, there was no body, there was no light. It was just a seat of creation.